So how much better is a $200 case for your gaming or workstation system compared to one that only costs $38? I mean, taking a few steps way back and looking at it from a perspective of someone who hasn't even built a computer before, they both look like a computer tower on the outside, both have a glass panel on the side, both have slots for fans, and both have USB ports for your thumb drives and also a power button. But taking a closer look, what does $38 actually get you in terms of value and features in a PC enclosure? What's the airflow like, and how much hotter does it actually run compared to more premium alternatives? So welcome the $38 Matrix 55 from Deepcool and the $200 Evolve X from Fantex. Most of you from the channel are familiar with the Evolve X. It's been one of the most anticipated cases of this year and is one of my favorite mid-tower cases for enthusiast systems. The Matrix 55, on the other hand, has only recently hit the market after its debut in Computex in Taiwan, so let's finally have a look at how these two compare. Let's start with build quality, as this is easily one of the biggest factors that these cases are on completely different levels with. So the Matrix 55 uses fairly typical materials for a case, mostly consisting of steel and plastic, but also tempered glass on the side and front, which actually makes this a very interesting option for the price. The Evolve X uses steel as well, but only for the frame. The rest of the panels are a nice thick sandblasted aluminium, which gives a much more premium look and feel. And as I've said this in the Evolve X and the Evolve Shift review, this is pretty much as good as you're going to get in terms of build quality for a PC enclosure. Here we've also got two tempered glass side panels on both sides of the case. Some would argue that that's not really necessary, but it's definitely a nice feature for the enthusiasts. There's actually a big difference between the tempered glass side panels as well in terms of build quality and appearance. The Matrix 55 uses fairly standard mounting with 4 thumb screws. The panel is also lightly tinted, but that's pretty much it. The Evolve X doesn't have thumb screws on the exterior at all, and it instead uses a hinge design with a magnet at the front of the panel to help secure it in. We've also got a completely blacked out perimeter to hide the frame of the case, and also a nice rubber seal on the perimeter to stop any air from coming in from those sides. I/O is kept out of plain sight for the Evolve X, hiding behind this discrete panel, which you'll also find at USB Type-C here. And on the Matrix 55, you'll find all of the I/O on the top, including a single USB 3.0 port, 2 2.0 ports, and also a switch to cycle through LED colors and modes. So yeah, we do have RGB here, even on a $38 case. It does look pretty good as well, if I'm honest, but it's obviously nothing compared to the fully addressable LEDs that you'll find on the Evolve X. And then you've also got illumination on the power supply shroud. So these are a few details already which contribute to the significant price difference that we see between these two cases, and to Deepcool's credit, I am amazed at how they could bring a $40 case to market with a tempered glass side panel full stop. Moving on to the interior, one big difference that you can see right away is the lack of a power supply shroud on the $38 Matrix 55. This means that with a completed build on the inside, your power supply cables will be on full show, usually resulting in a less tidy build. Another thing missing from the Matrix 55, and this is actually quite important, is even a single case fan. Seriously, there are no pre-installed fans at all, and I understand it's a $38 case, but come on, I'd rather see a cheap 120mm fan over RGB and tempered glass. In more premium cases, you will find at least 2 PWM fans, which will speed up according to system temperatures, and this means better out-of-the-box thermals for your system. This is an important consideration because the last thing that you want is your system overheating due to insufficient airflow. You'll likely need to invest an additional $20 or so here for the Matrix 55 to accommodate some fans. Another detail is the lack of interior cable management via cable grommets and covers, which you will find on more premium cases, but here you're basically left with bare cutouts in the motherboard tray, which by the way don't line up at all with the typical plug positioning, and this is something that I absolutely did not expect. The PCI expansion slots need to be snapped off of the rear panel to be removed and are not replaceable. This means that you could potentially cut yourself if you're not careful, and installing graphics cards was pretty difficult. For cable management on the Evolve X, we've got these panels that swivel open and that hide the entirety of your cables, a great consideration since there's a glass panel on this side of the case. Even beneath the panels though, there's plenty of Velcro straps and cable tie points to help secure things, so the building experience is going to be a lot more satisfying. Comparisons in terms of a radiator and fan positioning is a bit unfair because by design, the Evolve X is just a much larger case with superior compatibility, and since the Matrix 55 is manufactured in larger volumes, it uses a more mainstream mid-tower size design and layout. For custom water cooling loops, the Evolve X has fill and drain ports built in, whereas I would not recommend a loop in the Matrix 55 or other cheaper cases for that matter. You can still accommodate up to a 360mm radiator in the front though for AIOs, and also up to a 240mm at the top. For a $38 mid-tower, I'd say that's pretty sufficient. There's also a magnetic dust filter at the top of the case, which is a bonus at this price. The $200 Evolve X can accommodate up to a whopping 9 2.5-inch drives and 4 3.5-inch drives in total, whereas the budget enclosure can only accommodate up to 2 2.5-inch drives and 2 3.5-inch drives, and installation of the 2.5-inch drives might as well be impossible. The problem here is that since the drive fits flush with the motherboard tray, there's no room for the SATA cable to actually plug in compared to the Evolve X, which does have enough room and makes this installation a breeze. The 3.5-inch drive cage on the Matrix 55 is also not removable as far as I can see, which does suck when it comes to room for your power supply cables. The $200 Evolve X does have stackable and modular cages though, which is definitely handy. Now, something that is overlooked and admittedly something that some of you might not care about at all, and that's the building experience, which is much superior on the Evolve X. The user manual is extremely detailed, outlining radiator support and hidden features, and I definitely appreciate the container for separating all the screws. It's obvious why these little things aren't included in budget enclosures though. They are just a bit of a bonus after all, which just helps with the build process. Overall, the finished Matrix 55 build isn't half bad at all if I'm honest, and for $38 you honestly can't find anything better. The same build in the Evolve X looks a lot more where it should belong though, as these are by no means components that should be placed in a $38 case. By the way, the system inside here is what we'll be using to test all of the cases moving forward into 2019. We've got the Ryzen 7 1700 overclocked to 3.8 GHz and cooled by the Dark Rock 4 from Be Quiet, and for the graphics card we're using the GTX 1080 Strix. These are fairly high power components which should dissipate a lot of heat into the case, and this way we can analyze how good a mid-tower case is in regards to airflow and system thermals. For CPU thermals, we're running the Ryzen CPU in Blender for 15 minutes, and here there is a significant difference between the two. Keep in mind though that the Matrix 55 has no fans at all in the case apart from the Silent Wings 3 fan on the CPU cooler, so when you consider that, maybe it's not performing that bad. I measured a much larger gap in regards to GPU thermals though, 70 degrees C for the Matrix 55 versus just 64 C on the Evolve X. I will note that the Evolve X typically has performed pretty bad in regards to GPU thermals in my previous testing, so if you put the same GPU in a high airflow case like the Meshify C or NZXT H700, you likely see temps drop well into the 50s. So there definitely are a lot of differences between the $38 Matrix 55 and the $200 Evolve X. From hardware compatibility, build quality, and even system temperatures, the more premium cases are going to be better in the end. Having said that, for $38 on Newegg right now, the Matrix 55, you honestly cannot go wrong with it. I mean, it does seem like an absolute steal. If you're the type of builder who wants to allocate as much of their budget to a GTX 1080 or that next CPU upgrade, and then spend as little as possible on the case, well, this might be a case you want to check out. I honestly can't recommend anything else. I'd love to know your thoughts on the Matrix 55 though, and whether or not these differences between these two cases actually apply to you and your system. Interested to hear your thoughts down below. And obviously we are comparing two completely different ends of the spectrum here, and there are tons of cases that fit right in the middle. In fact, I feel like the majority of people watching this would be better off with those cases in the middle. Obviously not one of these cases on either spectrum. So the NZXT H500 and the Fractal Design Meshify C, those PC cases really are the best in terms of value. I feel they might not be the cheapest, they might not be the best quality, but you are getting pretty much everything you need for most people's systems out there. As always, guys, huge thanks for watching. Subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one.